So it's Jund week, or Riveteers if you are a zoomer like Emmy. But for boomers like me, we're testing out the new Jund's Charm, the new Jund's Triumph, and a handful of other Jund cards. There's nothing fancy going on in this list. We're just trying out 3 of the new toys from Streets of New Capenna, throwing them into a deck list with minimal synergy and just seeing how they perform. First up, Riveteers Charm. Black, red, green, instant with 3 modes. The first mode is an edict effect. The opponent sacrifices a creature or planeswalker they control with the highest mana value. Pretty good for an edict. Somewhat like Crackling Doom, you always get the best thing or something tied for the best thing, so it's much closer to a targeted removal spell than a classic edict, if I can use that expression. Mode number 2 is the Draw 3 mode. This gives us the hope of pulling ahead on card advantage in the late game. And finally, an emergency mode to exile graveyards. Will that come up? People do use the graveyard in Pioneer, but it's not the reason you put this card in your deck. Let's just put it that way. The other spicy card, Ziatora's Envoy. 4 mana for a 5/4 trample with Blitz 5. Whenever Ziatora's Envoy deals combat damage, you look at your top card. You either get to play that card for free immediately, or if you can't, it just goes to your hand. So you're always getting +1 card whenever you connect with Ziatora's Envoy. That said, it's very, very clunky. 4 mana for medium stats, does not have an Enter this battlefield trigger or any way to protect yourself from getting blown out. So we'll just see how this performs. I saw a list in the 5.0 dumps from a couple weeks ago that was playing a full playset of them. So I figure why not just give it a try. I'll draw the card a lot, I'm sure, and we'll see if it's any good. Finally, Tenacious Underdog. 1 and a black, 3/2 human warrior with Blitz 4 and pay 2 life. So you play this with haste. You can play it from your graveyard for the Blitz cost, so the Tenacious Underdog, you will hopefully just trade it away, or perhaps discard it to a Blood Token, or a Fable of the Mirror Breaker, or a Grimflayer. And at some point, you'll have the option to draw cards at 4 mana per turn. Strangle is here as well, so we're actually playing quite a few new Capenna cards, and we'll just see how they perform. So I don't know what to expect from this deck. I mean, it looks weak to me, to be honest. There's not as many cool synergies as I would like, but sometimes you just gotta try decks like this, and maybe they'll prove to be a pleasant surprise. Alright, so let's hop into a Pioneer League and see how it does. Alright, we're here for round 1. Game 1, and as you can see, I'm keeping a very risky hand. It's got not 1, not 2, but 3 copies of Thoughtseize, 1 black source, 1 red source, rather 2 red sources, and no green source. The hope is that if I can fire off these Thoughtseizes, neutralize both players' hands, then I'll have my Tarmogoyf equivalent in the Graveyard Trespasser and the Riveteers Charm to pull ahead. Of course, those hopes are immediately dashed as we see that our opponent is on mono red. The matchup in which Thoughtseize is at its absolute worst, and oh boy, there is the 4th Thoughtseize. So, we're not dead per se because our opponent has nothing left in their hand. We are still alive at 12 life with this Graveyard Trespasser, but from our initial Blood Crypta Mountain, we have yet to find a green source. Meanwhile, our opponent is getting closer to just activating the Ramunap runes. They're down to the Bugbear. It's really looking quite bad. I think I have a 1 turn to draw a green, but even here it's probably too late. Yeah. So, the risks of keeping a hand with shaky mana in Pioneer are immediately evident. We should not keep hands like that. Back now for game number 2, and we have sided out as many copies of Thoughtseize as we possibly can. This hand looks better. It has a threat. I'm going to call it a Tarmogoyf, although it's not truly a Tarmogoyf. Lots of spot removal, and a Fable of the Mirror Breaker to pull ahead. Now, unfortunately, we do have to expose this Grimflayer just to get something on the board. Doesn't pay off for us. You know, there was a pretty high likelihood that it was going to get stomped, or in this case, hit with Play with Fire. But I had nothing else to do with my mana. Chandra's coming down is a problem for me, because my hand, well, I can kill it with Abrupt Decay, but if this is how the game is going to be decided, I actually do not have any clean 2-for-1s where my opponent, as you can see, they've cast multiple copies of Light Up the Stage, they've gotten full value off this Bone Crusher Giant, the Chandra was a 2-for-1. They're actually pulling ahead on cards quite cleanly and pressure my life total at the same time, where I am just trying to, you know, get this stuff out of my hands so that I can at least compete. You know, we're clearing away the board, we're putting some damage on Chandra, but even just looking at what's currently showing on the board, it's not looking great for me, and this Torbran is a huge problem. So we finally were able to cast Ziatora's Envoy, but as you can see, I'm being attacked for much more than lethal. I have to trade. This Spikefield Hazard is quite bad. We're going to be chumping. We're, yes, going down to 6 here. They have another Ramunap Excavation, so I'm functionally at 4 life. That means we have to chump the Bone Crusher Giant. Not getting much out of this. And we are quickly down 0-1. Alright, round 2. After getting trounced by Mono Red in the first round, let's see if we can get a better result. Well, we're starting on a mulligan to 5. We learned our lesson from that first game of not keeping hands that cannot cast anything, but this is the flip side. You end up having to take mulligans, and I'm not totally sure that my deck can recover from that. Opponent looks to be on some kind of green-white deck, possibly with Collected Company. Not sure this is a tier deck, but you know, anytime we start on a mulligan to 5, okay, never mind. Looks like they are on a Vannifar pod deck. That is Eldritch Evolution, fetching Prime Speaker Vannifar. The assumption is that if they get to untap at all with a Prime Speaker Vannifar, they can go up the chain and, if not kill me, get an overwhelming board presence. So you really do need to be able to kill Prime Speaker on sight, and happy to say that Riveteers Charm was able to do that. So we're pressuring now. Here comes Ziatora's Envoy. I mean, this is what the deck is trying to do. The Grimflayer set up this Fatal Push on top, so the Blink is actually going to trigger Revolt for us. Displacer, nice defensive tool here, but we're going to have a nice turn with the Fatal Push. Fetch our companion, Giganta, and yeah, that's more than enough pressure. So, despite going down to 5 cards, because we were able to stick the Grimflayer, we were able to power through with removal. So we have our first game win under our belts, always feels nice, and while we did not actually trigger Ziatora's Envoy, it was the final nail in the coffin, as it were. We were able to put on good pressure with the Grimflayer and the Tenacious Underdog, use removal to kill creatures that the opponent had invested heavily in, and just clean up with large, derpy creatures. I mean, that's the Jund way. Opponent is off to a bit of a stronger start here. Voice of Resurgence is always good value in any kind of removal-based, combat-based attrition deck. I'm not even sure if I was supposed to give them this elemental token, but we do need to just keep things moving. We're going to play the Ziatora's Envoy here, and yeah, unfortunately we did not have a removal at the ready for the Prime Speaker Vannifar. So they get to untap with it, and we just have to hope that we live this turn. As you can see, they're going up the chain. It starts with Corridor Monitor, then Renegade Rallier to get back the Corridor Monitor. They end up with just a million power in play. They actually just, I guess, maybe click past their combat step by accident, but I'm very dead here. Ah, that's interesting. Okay, so they actually fetched up a Zirda the Dawnwaker, and this is an infinite combo. Eldrazi Displacer, Zirda, and Eyeless Watcher is infinite mana, infinite scions. This is going to be infinitely large, and we are very, very dead. No need to play this one out. Alright, deciding game here in round 2. We are on the play. We are looking for a hand that has some pressure and plenty of creature removal. This hand has the creature removal. It actually has an interesting hate piece in Weathered Runestone. This will shut down the Eldritch Evolution, will shut down the Vannifar pod, and any other kind of tutoring that this Yorion Toolbox deck was trying to do. So hopefully, if we can connect with this Grimflayer, we'll be able to dig for removal spells. Oh, that's a Scavenging Ooze. So somewhat awkwardly, the Scavenging Ooze being a 3/3 is too large for me to attack through, so it's all I can do to just develop more creatures, get my hate piece down to shut off any Eldritch Evolution shenanigans, and patiently wait. I mean, hopefully I will draw removal at some point. Thought-Knot Seer. Oh boy. Alright, so there's an interesting Eldrazi sub-theme to the opponent's deck. I have not seen this particular style of deck before. Here we have our Nambo of our Tenacious Underdog and Weathered Runestone, but I mean, we have to take this. We just can't allow the opponent to Vannifar us out. Gigantha is going to cost 7, so we just have to sit and wait. Nothing for it. We're going to use some blood, try to dig for action. I would love to get this Thought-Knot Seer off the board. The combination of Thought-Knot Seer plus Eldrazi Displacer can potentially lock us out of ever drawing good cards, but we have to get the Scavenging Ooze off the battlefield first. And oh, this Thoughtseize reveals that they are sitting on 2 copies of Neoform. So the Weathered Runestone is actually doing good work here. There's a Cataclysmic Gear Hulk as well. Let's see if we can't get rid of that. Yep, that Thoughtseize will do. So now the opponent is just on 2 useless Neoforms in their hand. This is going to come down to combat damage. It's going to be close. I mean, they can definitely hit us for a lot of damage here if they want. Okay, yeah, 7 damage coming through, and we are in some amount of trouble. Blinking the Reflector Mage. Luckily, we do have a blood token, so we'll get 2 draws next turn to try to find something to stabilize. That Fatal Push is very nice, so I'm actually going to blitz the Ziatora's Envoy. That will allow me to get Revolt this turn. Okay, that was a very awkward sequence. So I connected for damage with my Ziatora's Envoy, revealed a Strangle. I would be able to free cast it off the Ziatora's Envoy, except Weathered Runestone prevents me from playing from the top of my library. So I had to put it into my hand, cast it for mana to take out the Displacer, and that used up all my mana, so I was not able to push the Thought-Knot Seer. I mean, I'm not complaining, Strangle was a great draw, but it's just kind of a silly little Nambo built into a deck that has no synergies to speak of. Yeah, the Hash Up Oasis getting sacrificed forces me to chump block here, but I have the Fatal Push. I mean, this will unlock me from the threat of Thought-Knot Seer and potentially turn this game around. You know, Riveteers Charm is a great draw. Now I can maybe just draw 3 cards off of it, or save it as emergency removal if I just want to develop this Gigantha this turn, which I think is what I will do. And the opponent is going to concede. So we didn't get to actually cast Riveteers Charm to pull ahead, but you know, I will notch this as a win. The plan worked, and we have won our first match. So 1-on-1 now, and hoping for another matchup similar to the previous one, the last opponent being on some kind of Prime Speaker Vannifar creature-based Yorion combo deck, and my removal was able to just bust up their synergies enough that my miscellaneous, slightly overstated creatures were able to close the game out in the red zone. Yeah, this is already looking like potentially a very positive matchup in round 3. Another somewhat off-meta deck. This is the Pioneer equivalent of Soul Sisters. They are playing Voice of the Blessed. I assume we'll also see Trelasara Moondancer and Ajani's Pridemate. A bunch of effects that gain 1 life. As long as I can continue to draw removal spells and just kill their payoff creatures, I should be in good shape here. And it's very, very nice for scenarios exactly like this that the Riveteers Charm can function as that removal spell in a pinch. It always kills, you know, their highest CMC creature. Okay, well actually it can't kill it can't kill the Voice of the Blessed if there's Prosperous Innkeepers in play. But in theory, you know, this can kill their strongest creature. But as you can see, you know, we haven't really done anything fancy here. We've just tried to kill their big creatures and turn these Ajani's Welcomes into functional mulligans while we beat down. So they concede despite being at 27 life, and I think that's the correct decision. Up a game in round 3 against Green-White Soul Sisters. We have to mulligan that first hand, no lands. Second hand has 2 removal spells and a Thoughtseize to potentially take away another payoff. And as we take a look at their hand, we see they have exactly 3 payoffs. A Trelasara, a Voice of the Blessed, and a Ajani's Pridemate. Oh, okay, well, there's the Voice of the Blessed. We just need to keep drawing enough removal to kill all the payoff creatures, and then, you know, our Grim Flayer should be able to beat up any leftover Prosperous Innkeepers. That's the plan of attack, at least. We sided in 2 copies of Culling Ritual. This is a very interesting Wrath variant. It only blows up CMC 2 or less, but it gets everything. It gets treasures, it gets food, it gets this pesky Ajani's Welcome, and it even makes some mana for me, so I can fetch Gigantha when I cast it. But the opponent has seen plenty, and yeah, pretty clean 2-0. Alright, well, hope we keep finding matchups like this. We're in the winner's bracket finally at 2-1. We'll be back for round 3. Heading into round 4 with a 2-1 record, we are hoping to find, apparently, synergy-based creature decks. That seems to be our strongest matchup. Opponent leads on Unclaimed Territory into Thraben Inspector. Is this a 5-color Humans deck? Oh, there's a Thalia. That's going to take a whole turn away from me here. I have to play off curve. I'm going to develop the Blood Tithe Harvester so that next turn I can sack this to kill the Thalia, get Revolt, use Fatal Push to kill the General Kudro, and still have enough mana left over to summon a second Blood Tithe Harvester. That was a very nice turn for me. Although we still are under some pressure, we were able to neutralize the first wave of threats. Not sure about this block. I think it's important to just preserve life total, you know, take the Thraben Inspector off the board. But unfortunately, you know, we are running low on life. We have plenty of cards, but we're a little choked on mana because of the Thalia, and we are not quite stable yet. The opponent is out of cards in hand, but if they draw something good here, we're in a lot of trouble. Okay, so we need this Fatal Push to survive this turn, and we need them to not have a second creature. And oh, it's a disaster. It's a Reflector Mage. The Reflector Mage makes Ziatora's Envoy look very, very stupid. So the opponent just had a really, really aggressive start. Attacking with Ziatora's Envoy the first time may have been a little too greedy, but you know, there's no guarantee that leaving it on defense is going to work either. We just needed the opponent's draws to be a little bit less explosive there. Going into Game 2, down a game, I really thought I was in great shape in Game 1, but it ended up not working out. We're looking for a similar formula in Game 2. I've sided out the Thoughtseizes, brought in the Culling Rituals again, looking for just as much removal as possible. This is not a great hand, but it has, you know, the formula. Miscellaneous, stuff to clean up and removal to neutralize any threats. We will need to draw something to stop this Mantis Rider. Oh, perfect card. Oh, the Strangle was exactly what the doctor ordered. And that's even going to give us enough to use the treasure from this Fable token to cast Ziatora's Envoy. Will we actually get to connect with Ziatora's Envoy this turn? Time will tell. Alright, so attacking with the Envoy, it does have Trample. The opponent chooses to block with just their Adeline, and Riveteers Charm takes out their highest CMC creature, which is the Adeline. We get to free cast another Fable. That's very nice. Opponent has got 2 companies. That's usually a very powerful start. Let's see if we can outpace them. Fortunately, we are on the front foot, not the back foot. Oh, and we found the Culling Ritual. Okay, so this will mop things up nicely. We wipe out the opponent's board, make a bunch of mana. We're going to connect with Ziatora's Envoy. We still have Reflection of Kiki-Jiki. That was just a devastating turn, and the opponent scoops it up. Alright, Game 3, Round 4 against 5-color humans. On the draw this time, hoping that they don't catch us out with Athalia again. This hand is not great, but we gotta make do with what we have. We don't have any red sources, unfortunately. We do have two removal spells and a Graveyard Trespasser to catch up. Oh, perfect. Oh, that's exactly what we needed to get back in this game. Drew the red source on turn 2. After getting the Fatal Push off on turn 1, I mean, we are now suddenly curving out, if I can use that expression. Opponent, having missed their 3rd land drop, does find it on the 4th turn, so I know their hand is all spells at this point. The question is, are they sitting on a bunch of copies of Collected Company? If so, we could be in trouble, but if they're just choked on mana and just not deploying their average creatures in a timely way, I think this heavily favors us. Yeah, I mean, the fact that we get to cast Abrupt Decay this turn is so important. Oh, we drew a Dreadbore. Okay, so this is the Jund formula. Obviously, you hope to run into matchups like this, where your opponent needs to have their creatures and they stumble little bits. Grimflayer lets us keep setting up the top of the deck. I mean, this is exactly how you draw it up, but I don't know how common matchups like these are. Reflector Mage has been pretty solid against us. Both the Humans player and the Banafar player had it, and they made the Ziatora's Envoys look very, very stupid. But, you know, I think that despite the opponent having 2 more gas cards in their hand, you know, we should be able to just fight our way through here. We're putting them down to 1 life. We have the 4/4 Grimflayer with Delirium. We have a Reflection of Kiki-Jiki coming. Unless the opponent can company maybe into something huge, we have a decent shot of just pulling through, finding that last point of damage. Blood token here is perfect. I'm actually going to play the land so that I can summon my companion next turn. Chance of a Groundstall coming up, but with Reflection of Kiki-Jiki, I think we should be fine. Yeah. The opponent actually is going to concede, because with Kiki-Jiki coming non-summoning stick, we'll have 2 Blood Tithe Harvester activations plus the 4/4 trample for lethal damage. Alright, 3-1. Heading into round number 5, we have to mulligan our opening hand. Again, just trying to get our colors. This hand has the colors, but it also has 2 of the Jund Triumph, so it's a little bit awkward. We're going to be playing off curve, and oh, the opponent just slams down a Spell Pierce on this Thoughtseize. This is looking like either, is it Phoenix or is it Prowess? Both very, very popular decks and very good decks. This is much more of a tier deck than the last 3 opponents we faced. And oh, that Lightning Axe makes Grimflayer look quite bad. You can see that even though I've traded resources, I am not liking my position right now. Their graveyard is filling up, which means that they're just, you know, a treasure cruise or 2 away from running away with this thing. I would love to fire off this Riveteers Charm for 3 cards, but even then I'll be just trying to keep pace with, you know, the opponent's relentless graveyard value. There's that treasure cruise. You know, they've got 5 cards in their hand already. I have board presence, they do not. But this is going to be a bit dicey. Alright. There's the first Arclight Phoenix. Oh, the second Arclight Phoenix. Oh, okay. Well, we gotta fire off this Riveteers Charm. Clutch mode there, exiling the graveyards, took out 2 Arclight Phoenixes, and took out all of the graveyard as well. So the opponent is somewhat set back. Now, they do have another pieces of the puzzle. They just never run out of gas, unfortunately. Is it Dex? But we drew a very nice card here. So Ziatora's Envoy is finally going to pull through. I mean, this is our last engine card. I mean, we really need this to close the game. It did find Bloodtithe Harvester. I mean, this has been a good sequence for us. Jund Charm and Bloodtithe Harvester off the top. There's a Temporal Trespass. Do we want to fire off the Riveteers Charm? I think we will, just to prevent them from filtering through their deck even more. We'll get the Ledger Shredder off the table. We actually get to use the Blitz ability. I think this is the first time this league that we've blitzed the Tenacious Underdog. Otawara Soaring City, again, makes Ziatora's Envoy look pretty unimpressive. But thankfully, you know, we had enough tempo advantage that our other creatures were able to win the game. So that Riveteers Charm turned out to be clutch, exiling the 2 Arclight Phoenixes. This is still a tough matchup. It's certainly not going to be a picnic, but, you know, we're just 1 win away now from that 4-1. Here's the Ledger Shredder. I had played a tapped Fatal Push. Not sure if it was correct to play that tapped or untapped. I'm a little bit off curve, but it's unclear to me if this matchup is going to be decided by tempo or by card advantage. Opponent is rapidly filling up the graveyard. Oh, hard casting an Arclight Phoenix. I would love to snipe the Phoenix with a Graveyard Trespasser. That means I do have to use the Bloodtithe Harvester to kill the Phoenix on my turn. There's a Trespasser eats 1 Phoenix, and it looks like opponent has found a second Phoenix off their pieces of the puzzle. Ooh, a Treasure Cruise and a Strangle. Oh my gosh, that was devastating. So even though I got a 2-for-1 because of the ward, you know, that was still just such a good turn for the opponent. The Arclight Phoenix came back. They drew so many cards. And now I'm struggling to keep anything in play. I mean, you can see how relying on, you know, 4 4s or 5 4s to win the game, quote unquote, when one of the best decks in the format has just got an endless supply of Lightning Axe. It's not such an impressive game plan against, is it? So this is it now. Game 3, round 5, going for that 4-1. I did bring in a couple of hate pieces, and there's one of them. Weather Runestone. Obviously, Grafdigger's Cage would be a lot cleaner and more efficient, but the Runestone is capable of stopping Parhelion 2 from coming back out of the graveyard. So a big decision here for me. I actually have to choose what am I doing with my mana. I'm playing the Fable of the Mirror Breaker. It's a little bit risky, right? Like, the other option was to simply play a Fable Passage and develop one of these 2 hate pieces, either the Runestone or the Damping Sphere. Opponent only had a Ledger Shredder on their second turn, so it's not totally clear how much danger I'm in. I decided to instead be a little more proactive first, get some stuff on the table, force the opponent to react, and then slam, you know, either a Runestone or a Damping Sphere next turn. Now the trade-off is that the opponent gets to be unfettered here. They found a Arclight Phoenix off the Consider. That's disaster. They had a second Arclight Phoenix in hand, which the Ledger Shredder connive. This has just been an absolute disaster. So because I did not play my hate piece on turn 3, I am now basically dead in the water. That was the absolute best possible thing that my opponent could have done. For their worst for me, but best for them. Ledger Shredder became 3-5, or 2-4 I should say. Ledger Shredder became 2-4, and they attacked me immediately for 8 in the air, and now I just can't come back from this. yeah, maybe Damping Sphere in retrospect was the play. Damping Sphere would have made it significantly harder for them to even trigger the Ledger Shredder at all, and certainly to bring back an Arclight Phoenix, so maybe just the safe play was the correct one. But, I mean, you have to make that decision in the dark. You don't know what they have in their hand. You do not expect them to find an Arclight Phoenix off a Consider either. So I gambled, and it did not pay off. But that's why we play the games. Gotta learn these things the hard way. Taking the loss there, so we fall to 3-2. So we finished the league 3-2. All three of the wins came against fairly similar decks, creature-based decks that were quite vulnerable to a stack of removal, which between my Fatal Pushes, Strangles, Dreadbores, Abrupt Decays, Blood Tithe Harvesters, Riveteers Charms, I had almost 20 removal spells in the main deck, plus Fable and Grim Flayer to dig for more. You can even bring in additional, Noxious Grass. I brought in these Culling Rituals were quite good. So that seems to be the good matchup, if you will. That being said, against a deck like Mono Red in the first round, where they play creatures, I have removal, that should be a good matchup in theory. In practice, I just got crushed. I was a little bit too clunky, couldn't quite stabilize, and you saw how the reach from something as simple as Ramiap Runes and Den of the Bugbear just let them overpower me, even when on the card advantage axis. In terms of individual grades, the Riveteers Charm was used as a removal spell several times, had one clutch use against the Is It Phoenix deck, actually stole the first game by exiling 2 Phoenixes. Didn't actually cast the draw 3, but there were a couple of times where it was in my hand as I was wrapping up the game, so it could have put the game away in that respect. So, decent marks for Riveteers Charm. The 1-mana removal was all very impressive. Strangle was good in every matchup. If people are going to be bringing Bone Crusher Giants and Ledger Shredders, having Strangle is not so bad. Ziatora's Envoy, I'm going to give lower marks to this. 2 of our opponents had a Reflector Mage, and that made Ziatora's Envoy look very foolish, but it was also just hard to cast. You do have to ask, is the green splash even worth it? The Grim Flayers were nothing special, I don't think I even mentioned them, but they don't provide card advantages. They're just 4/4 tramples that can hopefully clean up the mess. Abrupt Decay was okay, Riveteers Charm was good enough, Ziatora's Envoy was not so good. In the sideboard, do we need Giganta? I did summon it to my hand a couple of times, but it barely impacted the board. Culling Ritual had some good moments. Weathered Runestone was a little bit awkward, both for the non-bow with the Envoy, and also because if this had just been a Graft Digger's Cage, we would have won that third game. You just slam the Runestone on turn 1. Or the Grafter's Cage, rather. Instead, I had to make a choice. Do I want to do this on turn 2 or develop my threats? I chose wrong, got heavily punished for it. And Tenacious Underdog is the last new card. This card was decent. I never really was excited to draw it. I was excited to loot it away whenever I had the chance to do that, with blood tokens or Fable. I liked how it doesn't have any restrictions on attacking and blocking, so you can just trade this on defense. I blitzed it once. That was somewhat relevant, but that does cost 2 life plus your entire turn to just deal 3 damage and draw a card. So I'm not sure if this is the best fit for this deck. Being a pure mid-range deck, I could go either way on this. And lastly, Thoughtseize was so-so. Just given the matchup spread, these Strangles and Fatal Pushes were just much more important. But, that may change over time. Too small a sample size to draw conclusions. Alright, so I think that is enough of this deck for now. A low synergy deck. To be frank, a low power deck, but it is always nice to just check on the state of Jund. in a given format, in this case in Pioneer, and see if the new toys and see if the new tools provided any fun toys. So thanks for watching. Let me know what you thought of this video, and if you have time to hit that bell, give us that like, give us that subscribe. You'll be notified when our next video goes live. Bye bye.